Alright, you beautiful people. Today, I'm going to take you through the journey of a record I worked on with an artist called Vava Bloom. And I'm going to take it through for you artists and producers to see, how to navigate from something in a phone demo all the way to a final master. And for the engineers watching this video, how to navigate with your clients and make decisions which affect the final product in a positive manner, or how to sort of go through that decision making. Here is the original demo, and here is the original, the final master. Alright, I'm going to play them now. Let's go. Alright, obviously, there are huge differences between when you record something on your phone as a note and when you actually go through the whole process of putting the record together and recording it at a studio and getting a producer on and getting a vocal producer on and mixing it and mastering it. Obviously, there are huge differences, but sometimes I feel like people still feel like they're not achieving what they're after, and I think that's because their decision making is out throughout that process. So I want to explain what happens at the start. Maddie sent me her first demo, and the working relationship I have with Maddie is one where we're super conscious of each other's goals. I'm super conscious of what she's trying to achieve with her music, and she's very open for me to provide feedback to help her get there. I'm not necessarily a lackey for her where she just sends something off, it gets done and it gets sent back. There is a mutual respect and relationship there where we can dialogue and help develop our work. So going into this project, I knew that this was something she really wanted to make special. She really wanted to put the effort, the time and the resources into getting it to the highest pedigree she possibly could on the level of musicianship, on the level of fidelity in terms of the quality of the product, and also just as something for her fans to listen to that they could really experience. So first phone demo I heard, the kick drum and the bass patterns were just floppy. And for me, I'm really conscious of how things translate on a recording. When you spend money on a recording studio, how things will actually sound after you play them in. And the kick drum and the bass pattern in the original phone demos went like this. Now you can hear how it's not super tight. Yes, you can edit things, but the patterns were completely different. And this was something that we went back and forth on about 3-4 times before we actually got the demo right. So for you artists, it's super important before you go into a studio to recognize this pattern, record things down, listen to things, and make sure things are tight and things aren't conflicting. Because when it was played live, and I've actually heard them play live at shows, it actually doesn't sound too bad. But recordings tend to expose everything and put everything on display. If you're not playing together, or you're playing different patterns, or you're playing conflicting rhythms, it's not going to sound too flattering. So that was the first thing we did. The next thing, and I can't recall if this was, if I remember this correctly, because she has a friend who was helping her on the keys, and they were sort of developing ideas at the time. I let her know that I really wanted to make sure that those keys, which are a beautiful texture, beautiful filler in the track, don't sit in the same register as her vocals. Like, her unique position is that her voice has a really incredible tone, and conflicting that with with an element that's important to the music and the production in the same register was just going to cause hassles for me during mixing, and also it wasn't going to represent or help her take the spotlight as a vocalist. So that was something we were really conscious about as well in demo stages. At the end of demos, we needed to find a recording studio. So this is something that's really important, and if you're an engineer, I think it's really important you have lots of good relationships with many different recording studios and producers who have different styles and can help your clients out differently based on their needs, their wants, their aesthetic, and basically that a fit for their project. And if you're an artist, it's really important to shop around and not just go to the first place and actually see what's out there. So on this project, we had 3 potential recording studios with different engineers, obviously, and they all had their own different vibe. But one of the studios was a really nice high-end studio with great facility. If we could get a producer that worked at that studio who was a similar style, it probably would have went ahead, but there wasn't that added sell. It was just a really nice space for a little bit of a higher budget, but it wasn't going to give us anything more to the project. Another space, aesthetically, Maddie really loved. It was actually no buts. It was a really high contender. But the studio we ended up going with was Big Sky Audio, because I've worked with James Freeman there before, and James is a producer and an artist in his own right. And what that meant was, I knew if I sent Maddie off to that studio, I could trust James to get into her artistic mindset, understand the process sonically to achieve what she was after. And we were really lucky we went with him, because at the end of the day, she was ecstatic with the process. She was really ecstatic with the fidelity, the recording, the creativity, the tone, everything that they were able to achieve. And they were able to also throw in some really cool extra little like synth parts and a glockenspiel part, or was a xylophone, I can't remember, but they were able to achieve above and beyond what they originally set out, because they were really good pairing both personality and both what Maddie needed and what James could do for her. So, you know, that's a really important step of the process. Now, we had the demo, and then we went through to this stage where we got the recording done of the band. We didn't do the vocals there, and I'll explain why in a moment. And it was just incredible. So yeah, if you're an artist, look, you got to look at as many studios as possible, talk to the engineers, talk to the producers at those studios, make sure they're fit for you. And if you're an engineer, have relationships that you're close with and integrated into with local studios, even studios internationally and interstate, because, you know, in this day and age, as a mixing engineer at least, I work with people all over the world, and I know many mixing engineers do that as well. So it's always good to have contacts everywhere and help people out where you can. Moving forward, so we finished the recording, didn't record the vocals there. We didn't elect to record the vocals there, because at the start of the project, we were super conscious that, you know, her vocals are the calling card. Just sonically, her voice captures a listener in. So I have a colleague, Jeremy Drakeford, who is an incredible vocal producer. He's incredible at he's just got an awesome ear. I can't do it. I know James could have really got a good recording out of her vocals, but we wanted to really develop and flesh out the vocal part. So what originally was her one take ended up becoming something with like 4 or 5 stacks of different vocals. Jeremy made sure they were all aligned and super tight, and that changed the whole scope of it, because it was like we were fleshing out the instrumentation of the record whilst actually doing her vocals, which I was super grateful for, and we were super lucky to do that. I'll A-B the 1-track vocal recordings they did with James, because they roughed vocals in just to get a feel for how the track was sounding and sonically how things were fitting together. And then I'll do the B side of when the vocal parts are all fleshed out, and it's just incredible. Here, I'll let you guys listen. I'm ready, but I'm feeling this time. I'm ready, but I'm feeling this time. Awesome. Like, you can hear just sonically how the vocals come to the foreground, how they really encapsulate you as a listener. So that I was super happy about. So then, you know, you got your vocal parts. Then I had to mix the record, of course, and, you know, the mixing is nothing fandangle. It was the fact that I was so close to this record. I understood the intricacies of it. I knew where it was going. As a mixing engineer, it was really easy to just sort of start and move forward on. I actually did a video whilst I was doing the revisions for them on how I collected their notes for the revisions, because it was a really interesting process. All the band members sort of get involved, and I really invite that to happen. Always at the authority of the person leading the job, which was Maddie. Maddie goes, you know, I really want them to have input, so I said, yes, let them give me input. So, you know, I'm getting notes from the drummer, the guitarist, the bass player. The bass player just really wanted the bass super, super loud, like all bass players do. But, you know, we sort of had a little voting system to make sure that we kept everything tame and that the notes were constructive and towards our end goal. And then I finished mixing it. And by this time now, this is a bit of a pivot point, because I do mastering at this studio, and I often, you know, master some of the records I mix. However, this particular project, I didn't start working on after they finish the production and just mix it, and then I have the opportunity to master it. I have been with this record for about 4 months before we got to the point where we needed to master it, which meant I was pretty in deep on this. So not 4 months. If it started in July and it's October, November now, it was maybe like 3 months, 2, 3 months. But still, for me, that's a lot of time to spend on a record, living with it. So I made sure that, we elected a mastering engineer for this project who could bring a sympathetic ear, understands the style, and isn't too heavy-handed. And that was Adam Dempsey at Deluxe Mastering. He mastered another record I had done for Maddie, and he knocked it out of the park. And for me, it was just having that extra pair of ears, because I'd spent a lot of time with this project. Maddie had spent a lot of this time with this project. It's really hard to give your baby away and allow somebody else to do work on it, but this sort of goes back as a recurring theme back to the recording studio selection. I know a lot of mastering engineers as a mastering engineer, and I know sort of everybody's different capabilities, their strong points and their weak points, so it was super easy to make this decision for me. It's not like I had to shop around or find people to do test masters, because number one, I don't agree with that, and number two, I feel like people typically ask for test masters when they don't know what to expect, but I knew exactly what to expect from Adam. So yeah, and we got the master back, and it sounded like this. Which was awesome. So, look, for me personally, I think this sort of dialogue and this sort of narrative of how a project gets put together from start to end is super important. I might get an opportunity later in the week or early next month to go through some of the mixing techniques I used on this, because I did do some weird shit. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. If you've made it this far through the video, super props to you. Like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, take care.